Chapter 1 The Unplayable Team-Pat, Clack. The sound of constant typing on the keyboard resounded in the laboratory. The young man in the white coat of a scientific researcher stood in front of the computer, with 10 dexterous fingers constantly rising and falling on the keyboard. Hee-Yoon looked at the changes and transformations of the data calmly, like a machine, just looking at his young face, as if he should have appeared on the basketball court, playing basketball with high school students. But in fact, although he is young, he is not the age of a high school student, but he is a little tender-faced. He's the core researcher here. After he pressed the last key and the secret transmission command was sent out, he opened another item table to change the data, when footsteps came from behind him. When the footsteps stopped, there was a sound of panting. "Dr. He, hand over your research file number 7, you are the last one." When the voice came, Hee-Yoon's hands stopped, and he slowly turned around to look at the acquaintance who appeared in front of him, glanced at the gun in his hand, and looked at him who was a little delicate but not eye-catching face. A thought rose in my heart, it's really a face that should be in a spy movie. "Stop calling me a tutor, my dear student." Hee-Yoon looked at the blood-stained white coat in front of him, sighed, and took off his glasses casually and put them aside. His eyes, which were not covered by glasses, were very bright, and at first glance they gave off a childlike clarity, but after staring at his face carefully for a long time, one could feel the calmness hidden under that expression. He said with a smile in his usual tone, "Old Shang, you once asked me to make a detection and communication device. If 4 of the 6 core personnel of laboratory number 86 die, all the information will be lost. The backup package bypasses all the original communication systems, and is transmitted to an independent information receiver in the form of a composite-coded ripple signal. As for the location of the receiver, he did not tell me." Old Shang, another core member of this lab. Research file number 7 is a high-tech suit developed by Hee-Yoon. If it is successfully developed, humans will become real superheroes after training. "Uncle Shang, Shang Union is the 4th one." I said why he was so calm when he died. He cared about the country the most. Li Yu, who might have become the 7th core member, conducts experiments every day, and now the hand holding the gun is violently bulging, the corners of his eyes are twitching, and his tone is full of distortion. Anyone can hear it to calm down the surging emotions. But he forcibly suppressed his emotions, with a smile on his face, expressing friendliness. "According to the huge amount of data, it is impossible to transfer it in a short time. Doctor, can you stop it? You are the developer. I think, if you can cooperate, we will all have satisfactory results, and as a partner, you can also survive." In order to complete this task, he even took the brain development medicine that has not yet been fully developed. He has paid too much and must not fail. "It's useless, Li Yu." Hee-Yoon gritted his teeth at him, like a mischievous sunny boy, and he blinked, as if he was talking to a friend about which bar to go to. "Since you came to me 3 minutes have passed in front of you. 2 minutes ago, your mission was declared a failure. Don't try to get the secret order to retrieve the number 7 scientific research document from me. The 3rd minute is to detonate the bomb and let the groundwater rush into this body. The time of the underground laboratory. Speaking of which, I quite like the glasses you gave me." After he finished speaking, he picked up the glasses at hand and shook them. When Li Yu turned blue and was about to say something, there was a roar in both of their ears, followed by the sound of water, and the vents and doors of the laboratory were all opened by a hidden command. The last thing Hee-Yoon saw was Li Yu's ferocious face and the hand raising the gun, and then his eyes went black. Can a person die completely because of physical death? At least Hee-Yoon is not. His will, or his soul body seems to have entered a place of nothingness. There are many light clusters around him, and he seems to have become a light cluster, but many light clusters disappeared as soon as they appeared. He seemed to be the only one awake, or able to move. Thinking of his life, he didn't feel any grief or indignation. Even when he mentioned regret, he just thought that he didn't touch Tima in the end, because the final data of the battlesuit had been completed, so all he thought about was that he hadn't touched Tima for a few months. Game. With the passage of time, he slowly drifted randomly in this nothingness with only light balls, until he collided with a piece of wood-like thing. His last thought was just, "Yeah, isn't it a ball of light?" This is a trivial rant. During this period of unconsciousness, he experienced world travel, entered a mother's body, became a newly born embryo, grew up a little bit over time, and was finally born and became a newborn baby with he got a new name, No Yugal, and even had a Christian name, Owen Rice. When the baby's eyes can see the world, Hiyun or Nyohi looked at the surrounding environment and sighed. His little eyes were full of despair. JPG God knows what a painful experience it is to let a person relieve his infancy. But, alive. I can play Tima now. Little No, waving his little arms, babbling. The new family is a relatively wealthy family in New York, USA. Noah's father owns a well-run company, and his mother is a lawyer. Nyohi grew up safely until he was 5 years old. During this time, Nyohi was very comfortable and enjoyed his childhood like a real child. In the eyes of his new parents, he is a child who knows how to measure. They didn't know about the injury. When they watched them frowning at their wounds, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com No felt that it was fun to experience the pain. In his previous life, he didn't feel pain. But when all kinds of information that represents the world is marvel, it is continuously displayed in front of him, especially when he sees Tony. Marvel. Signpost stone. Time point. Stark, this still very tender Iron Man. After the news hit the headlines, little Nyohi waved his arms, angrily expressing, "Your uncle's Lee Stan. I don't want to see that NPC face of yours, so me back. Give me back Tima." Yes, in the Marvel world, there is no masturbation. Life is still going on. Nyohi enjoys his childhood very much. In his previous life he basically lived in a laboratory from childhood to adulthood. He was born with a high IQ talent, but he was also accompanied by congenital painlessness, so in his previous life my life is actually very boring. 11 years later, Nyohi held a mobile phone in his hand and stuck it to his ear, watching him in the mirror arranging his hair. The boy in the mirror has soft chestnut hair that is slightly curly, and his facial features are also very delicate. His pale grey eyes are like gemstones, with a bit of cold mystery, but there is always a smile at the corner of his mouth, which makes him feel more beautiful. He looks sunny and cute. "Honey, you should go to school." A gentle female voice came from the phone. Nyohi pressed her hair again before saying, "Mom, I see, I think it's time for me to say goodbye." "Okay, dear, goodbye." The sound from the mobile phone disappeared. Nyohi put the mobile phone in his pocket casually, walked to the kitchen, took out the 2 slices of bread that had just been baked, picked up a few slices of lettuce, made a simple sandwich and ate it. "I am Iron Man. I am Iron Man." He turned his head and looked at the TV that was still playing, replaying Tony Stark's declaration a few days ago. Chapter 2 The existence of heroic spirits. Watching the TV, Nyohi unconsciously recalled 6 years ago, when he first felt the strength in his body, when he was playing with the neighbor the grass making clay figurines. But on the way, he suddenly and vaguely perceived the decay in his body, not a disease, but a decay in the pure sense of life. After returning with the excuse of having a stomachache, he tried his best to understand what was going on. In the land of nothingness in the previous life, the wood he hit could be said to be a kind of divine object, a divine object with infinite power, but it was too damaged, and it maintained its vitality in a static state in the land of nothingness. But for unknown reasons, he is now completely integrated with No. After leaving the land of nothingness, its remaining vitality began to disappear again, because it had become the essence or source of No, and its death represented the end of No's life, and this almost completely disappeared vitality, at most it can only last until No is 17 years old. But all this is not just bad. No came back to his senses, stretched out a finger with his empty hand in front of him, and suddenly a bunch of flames appeared from the fingertips. This is not relying on any special ability related to the fire element, but tampering with the rules of reality to make this flame appear out of thin air. This kind of power can even be said to be the ability to make one's wishes come true, symbolizing miracles and impossibility. If Noah restores this power to a strong enough point, he will be omnipotent. Noah didn't understand why the Primarch who possessed this power died, and even left only a remnant body. Knowing that the origin can be repaired with the emotions of living beings, or things related to the fundamentals of the world, Noah has made many actions in the past 6 years. It's dangerous and fascinating, but the thrill of changing the world is quite interesting. After extinguishing the flame at his fingertips, Nyohi shook his hand, swallowed the remaining sandwich in 2 bites, washed his hands, picked up his school bag and went out. Hey Noah! Hey, Draven! Nyohi, I guess what you ate this morning must be a bread sandwich without toppings. Well, Haas, your nose is always so good, but I just didn't add the ham, I put a few slices of lettuce instead. Hi! Noah, how do you see me today? Yerl, I guess you must be using your mom's makeup. After entering the school bus, Nyohi received many warm greetings, and he responded naturally and sat in the back row. He took off his school bag, put it on his chest, and asked the little boy beside him with several pockmarks on his face, Kong Tan, how was last night? I mean those materials. No, you are simply a genius. Those things are so useful. I feel that I must have a perfect score in this afternoon's test. Kong Tan excitedly said. Noah shrugged and said, actually, buddy, I gave that information to many people, so yours won't look too good when the results come out. Well, that group of shit, I bet they didn't pay attention, only I will not disappoint your no. Kong Tan lowered his voice and whispered. Okay, sir, you'll be great. Nyohi just gave a chuckle of encouragement, and then stopped talking, but Kong Tan was already familiar with his character, and didn't care about it, just kept sharing his own affairs beside him. When halfway to the school, Nyohi took out his mobile phone, looked down at the date displayed on it, and said silently in his heart, today is finally here. His plans, his future, his everything. It was a blessing to live again, so Noah had no complaints about the price of his ability from the beginning. And when he learned that he came to the Marvel world where the earth is overturned every day, he was grateful. Although he didn't think that his scientific research ability could not compare with those scientists in the original plot, he was faced with more superstandard things. His limitations are there. And this unexpected ability made him no longer feel hopeless and powerless, but had the possibility to climb to all heights. It has been 6 years since he first awakened this power, and he has turned from 5 to 11 years old. During this time, he has already planted enough foreshadowing, so that his plan can be fully realized in this precipitation display. And these foreshadowings have already caused a lot of influence, allowing him, the power that could only slightly change reality, to grow a lot. If it was just a stream that was not too big to create a fire, now it is a big river that can set off waves, and there are already too many things that can be changed. Wallachir Private Middle School, a middle school with a reputation for decades, was developed by the old principal Batu, and is known as the cradle of famous schools. When Nyohi was sitting on the stool in the class, he leaned on his head with his right hand, and put his hand on his right eye seemingly unintentionally. While his dear teacher wrote one formula after another on the blackboard, his mind was immersed in other things. A place. Sorry, I really don't want to review those boring things today. Well, this seems to be my daily line. On the corner of an unnoticed street in New York, a figure gradually emerged. It was an exceptionally handsome young man. He was the avatar of No's existence consciousness. No guilty smile. He walked out, lowered the gentleman hat he was wearing, and walked into an auction house. Because of the invitation letter he took out, the security guards did not stop him at all. When he got inside, he sat in a corner and watched the auction process that had already started. The following auction will be the diary of the famous Russian demon monk Rasputin. Dear gentlemen and ladies, I think if you have known this person, you will know that he is a rumored special person, and he has the ability to sleep all over the world. The reputation of all women in Russia, he possesses power and wealth, and he was a man of the age of Tsar Nicholas II. I think his diary has a very precious meaning. Next, please bid. The initial amount is $60,000. After the auction hall was silent for a while, those who were interested raised their signs one after another 120,000 times. 130,000 times. 201,000 times. In a remote corner, a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 50s looked at the diary and said silently in his heart, "It's mine." He fumbled for the watch on his wrist, and the bulging veins on his hand represented his restlessness. His name is Sander and he is a businessman. He looked at the diary, and there was only one thought in his heart, that he didn't want to wait any longer. Since he got that, he has been looking for historical items with spirituality, but after spending a lot of time, the historical items with spirituality not only did not get, but made a bunch of fakes, and the real ones, either he was not satisfied, or they couldn't be summoned. As for that diary, he could feel that relying on today's special day, he could barely summon an item with this level of spirituality. That's right, he discovered that the spirituality in the human body has a cycle, which is high and low. Although the range is not too large, but through the 2 years of exploration, he has calculated that today is the day when his spirituality is the highest. If he misses it, then don't know how long it will take. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com. Anxiety, panic, fear of accidents, and different emotions attached to his heart. In the end, he made a decision to do it directly. He is not an irrational person, but in fact, he is already a pauper on the verge of bankruptcy, buying all kinds of antiquities regardless of the cost, making him, who had a good financial situation, completely reduced to a poor man. Sleeping heroic spirit, respond to me, and descend from the ancient hall of valor to the world. Your body is entrusted to me, my destiny is attached to your sword, respond to the call of the supreme reason, and obey this will. When the auctioneer shouted 240,000 times, he suddenly found a voice from the audience who had been reciting inexplicable sentences. He followed the voice to find the person, and said politely, "Mr. at auction." Sander ignored it and continued to recite the not too long incantation. He stood up, looked at the people around him, and said in a deep voice, "You will witness the greatest mystery, but as a mortal, I will take your amnestics." Just when the security guard was about to step forward and control him as a mentally disturbed person, the diary on the stage suddenly shattered, the display case flew out, and a magic circle formed under it. After a burst of light that caught everyone's sight, when their sight recovered, a tall Russian man in ancient robes appeared in the diary's original place. Thanks for watching, please subscribe. Chapter 3: The Lost Legends. This tall Russian man who suddenly appeared in a magical way, he inspected everyone in the auction house, and locked his eyes on Sander. He looked at Sander with piercing light blue eyes, and said in a gentle and serious voice like a preacher, "You, the one who summoned me." Sander stepped forward without the slightest fear, opened his arms to express his enthusiasm, and said with excitement, "It's me, Rasputin. It's me who brought you back to this world, and erased all the people present's memories of you. Drop it, you with hypnotic eyes should have no problem at all." He has fantasized about becoming the President of the United States with Rasputin's ability. Gentlemen, no matter what means you used to complete this magic trick, please return Raskin's diary now and don't disturb the normal holding of the auction. Rasputin glanced lightly at the auctioneer who was about to grab his sleeve. The auctioneer froze for a moment, his eyes became dull. Similarly, several bodyguards surrounded him. Yet, no problem at all. Looking back at Sander again, Rasputin showed a smile that made people feel good. Just when the audience was filled with uneasiness, and even some people were about to get up and leave. Suddenly he grabbed Sander's neck with one hand and lifted him up. Rasputin roared angrily, "Who allowed you to summon me here? There's not even a single protective measure." Under the sudden change, Sander panicked. He quickly said, "I am the one who summoned you, you can't resist me." "Idiot! You don't even have a command spell. Before you summoned me, you never asked Hilly for the qualification to be a master. Damn it, where did you get the summoning method from?" Rasputin's eyes suddenly filled with anger, and he strangled Sander's neck tightly. He was summoned illegally, and although he was allowed to have freedom, the consequence of this behavior without concealment was that he was directly exposed to the surveillance system of the Hall of Valor. "What is the truth?" Sander looked confused. "What a qualified magician, I don't even know the truth." At that time, the truth of all is also the root of all things, the root of the Hall of Valor where our bodies live. Rasputin sneered. You can't do this to me. In order to summon you, I lost all my money, even sold my daughter. Oh, to chase the mysterious crazy people." Rasputin's tone rose like an opera, and the anger in his eyes seemed to subside slowly. "Mouth. Since that's the case, you can merge with me as one." A shock happened, and Sander suddenly screamed in extreme pain, like a person submerged in a quagmire, and gradually disappeared into Rasputin's body, struggling deeper and deeper. When Sander disappeared, Rasputin opened his arms and closed his eyes in enjoyment. He opened his eyes after a while, and murmured contentedly, "Hee, it's really a good feeling, this kind of flesh and blood." Rasputin glanced at the crowd in front of him, and sighed, "It's a pity, the law enforcement officer is coming soon, it's a pity for these flesh and blood." Everyone who was still in the auction hall felt a blur in front of their eyes, and when they recovered, Rasputin had disappeared. "Although the human protection agency I built can make up for it, it can't make up for all of this. Although I have created a future I for myself through my ability, I will sell my daughter after seeing Sander's future bankruptcy, but I still can't deny this so-called goodness is a fake, and in the not-too-distant future it will surely involve the truly innocent. Fortunately, after the underworld corresponding to the Hall of Valor is established, the dead will be resurrected in a different way." Noah, who completely took this scene into his eyes, sighed softly. "No, he is neither a good-hearted person nor a bad-hearted person. He knows that if the goal is big, the innocent will always be involved. If he is timid, he might as well go back to his hometown to grow sweet potatoes and wait to die. Child, let's go." When an old man passed by him, he stopped and patted him, taking him as one of the frightened people. "Thank you for your reminder." Noah stood up and fled the auction with the crowd. Rasputin did not leave with spiritualization, but hypnotized everyone present, and left quietly. He wanted to find a place that was quiet enough for him to think quietly. He originally thought that this time he came into the world, there would be a war triggered by a fight for the opportunity to make a wish to the supreme reason that can fulfill all wishes. But in fact, the one who summoned him was just an unrelated person who was not even a low-level magician, who didn't even know the rules, and who accidentally obtained a mystery. He came to the world as a violating hero, and he will be killed by the law enforcement hero who obeys the law of balance, descending from the Hall of Valor and making him return to the Hall of Valor. It's a pity, but it's not a war of truth after all. But Rasputin found that his spirit foundation had undergone strange changes since it came, and this change made him feel uneasy, so he didn't want to go back, and he didn't want to face to law enforcers. He attached spirit particles to the surface of his body, forming a kind of invisibility, and increased the effect of movement, and quickly shuttled on the street. Suddenly, he spotted a crow, followed by a whisper in his ear. "You can't hide from my eyes." There are 3 Guyu in the scarlet eyes of the crow, and the 3 Guyu turn quickly and become a windmill. Rasputin felt that his whole body was being seen through. Even if his figure was attached by the spirit seed, he could not achieve the effect of invisibility. He stopped and showed his figure. He looked at a man and a woman who suddenly appeared in front of him, frowned and said, "Why, you stopped me in such a hurry, even at the expense of exposing." "It doesn't matter, the agreement between the mysterious world and the guardian of the world no longer exists, and the exposure of the Hall of Valor is within the permitted range." The young man in the red cloud and black robe said calmly among the two. "Rasputin, with the two of us here, you can't escape, return to the Hall of Valor." The blonde girl in blue armor also said. "It's a wonderful feeling, I think this is women's clothing." No's avatar looked at the scene from three perspectives, and the Uchiha Itachi and Artoria that appeared were also his avatars. It was particularly novel for him to transform into a female figure like Artoria. Although not created an autonomous heroic spirit like Rasputin, he will play the role of the characters related to his plan before the game is fully unfolded. "Really? Since that's the case, I seem to have no choice but to let go," Rasputin said with a sigh. Their sudden appearance has attracted the attention of many people, and many people have picked up their mobile phones to take pictures. "Hey! Are you magicians? It's so cool. No matter how long it has passed, the ignorant laymen are so noisy." Impatientness flashed in Rasputin's eyes, and he said coldly, "Noble phantasm, messy handwriting." When a volume of various appointments was written, as imperial officials who randomly appointed the Tsar to the government and issued various unreasonable orders appeared in handwriting, it exuded a frenzied atmosphere. The humans and various animals in the area of 500 square meters centered on him suddenly violently beat each other. Car accidents, robberies, gang fights, all kinds of violent incidents happened one after another. But before the more tragic death, a clear and soft voice resounded in the hearts of every crazy person. "If you can't calm down, try to relax. Sleep until all evil is gone." The manic humans and creatures fell asleep one after another. Rasputin looked at the newly appeared woman without surprise, and said in a natural tone, "Sure enough, there is a third person who appeared to prevent casualties. The existences who came to maintain order, I wonder if the three can tell me the name?" "As for the name of Grigory Yefimovich Rasputin, I have already informed you when I want to send everyone to the Hall of Valor. Uchiha Itachi, King of Great Britain, Arteria Pendragon." The third heroic spirit who appeared remained silent, her beautiful appearance always maintained a gentle and generous smile. Chapter 4 Coulson and Iron Man. Hee, what a cold lady. Rasputin teased, but his heart was extremely nervous. He is not a fighting spirit, and he saw that two of the three heroic spirits were female. At that time, he thought that he could achieve a good situation by relying on his fascination with women due to his flirtatious life and his own special ability. But he found that for the first female heroic spirit, his charm had no effect on her at all, and the second female who appeared, not only was not charmed by him, but almost made him fall in love. A Japanese ninja, a legendary king, a woman who must be a legend. I really value me, but the ancient legendary king of England is such a beautiful girl, it is really unimaginable. Arrive," Rasputin said. The next moment his figure flashed, he appeared behind Uchiha Itachi instantly, holding something like a silk thread in his hand, and the other end of the silk thread was wrapped around Uchiha Itachi's neck. "My treasure, the hair of a Russian woman, plus the uncleanness I was endowed with in legends after I became a heroic spirit, you can no longer use your abilities." Uchiha Itachi's neck was strangled. Boom! After a puff of smoke, only the two halves of the wood remained. Fire escape. Phoenix Fairy Claw Fire. After dodging a dozen hot fireballs behind him in embarrassment, Rasputin heard the cold voice. He looked at the man's figure with fear, and sighed, he is really not to be underestimated. I don't die in the dark, but a ninja who dies of my own will. Avoiding assassination is the power given to me by the Hall of Valor. Uchiha Itachi said quietly. After dodging Artoria's sword, Rasputin groaned in his heart, he was not good at close combat at all. Look at me, ninja! Rasputin seized the opportunity, and while he was looking at Uchiha Itachi, his eyes burst into chaotic swirls. Both of them froze in place for an instant. What a good way to die! The corners of nose-mouth twitched slightly in the distance. It was just a moment seen by the outside world, maybe not even a second. Rasputin screamed and collapsed on the ground. Uchiha Itachi took a step back and let out a muffled groan. He covered his eyes with his hands and screamed. Blood continued to flow from between his fingers. He frantically wiped the blood from his eyes with his sleeve, and when he was not screaming, he gasped and got up. "I've had enough." Rasputin suddenly inserted his finger into his eye and plucked it out. After letting out a suppressed howl, when he opened his eyelids again, he revealed the regrown eyeballs. During this process, the heroic spirits only surrounded him, but did not attack him. "You are afraid of me." Rasputin lost the elegance he had always maintained, and looked at the three heroic spirits and said viciously. The heroic spirits didn't speak, just looked at Rasputin silently. Many helicopters hovered in the sky, and the four heroic spirits, including Rasputin, had already sensed the area they were in. The army had sorted out the chaotic crowd and gradually surrounded it. They all felt countless cold muzzles pointing at themselves, just waiting for an order, and a torrent of steel would erupt on their bodies. New York is very big, even for locals there will be many unfamiliar places. But there is a kind of person, even if he has never been there, he knows the terrain well. Coulson is an elite agent, and while his hairline is a bit high and he might go bald later, that's the kind of guy he is. He has been on many missions before, but this time his heart is heavy. Because of the four newly appeared supernatural beings that caused great confusion, one of the faces was exactly the same as the American Pearl who passed away in 1962, Marilyn Monroe, who was known as the goddess of sexiness. After the judgment of the instrument, it was 100% match. This may represent the emergence of cloning technology. The maturity of this technology will undoubtedly bring great turbulence to society. This matter is beyond the police's control. He patted the police officer on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Sir, please leave everything to us. We are professionals." He walked out and came to a place very close to the four supernatural beings he thought, and said in a deep voice, "Dear sirs and ladies, maybe we should talk." When Rasputin wanted to kill the mortal who disturbed the situation, he found two murderous intentions hanging over him, so he had to forcefully suppress his killing intentions, because he was not sure about his speculation. Why dare not kill yourself? Unlike Uchiha Itachi and Artorias Come after seeing Coulson, the eyes of the female heroic spirit who had never done anything after saving the New York citizens trapped in Rasputin's noble phantasm were full of indifference. Do you still have hatred for what happened in your life, and hate everything about politics because of it? Marilyn Monroe died of political events during her lifetime. The heroic spirits that appear today are the same as Rasputin, and they were shaped by Noah with the sublimation of the world's own soul. Noah, who was hiding in the crowd, pulled his hat down. The moment he saw Coulson, his plan was officially launched. The next thing he has to do is to prevent all this from being covered up by them. He will immerse most of his mind into Itachi Uchiha's prosthetic body. Who are you, ladies and gentlemen? You have caused a great deal of chaos in the Order of America. Coulson made a signal with the hand behind his back, indicating that he should not use force directly, and let him negotiate first. This is not what you should care about, law enforcement officers in this world. Uchiha Itachi said calmly, "If you must understand, you can call us people of history that shouldn't exist." Coulson frowned. You read the book www.yuyuganshu.com, then looked at the female heroic spirit who calmed down the chaos created by Rasputin, and said, "So, are you Miss Marilyn Monroe?" He still doesn't believe most of Uchiha Itachi's words, but when there is a person who is almost exactly the same as the former Marilyn Monroe, he will not immediately deny it. Although there is a great possibility that some genius scientist has vacated some black technology and used the genes of the ancients to clone the ancients. But the extraordinary power displayed by these four people is not like supernatural powers. Coulson thought of the information in the SHIELD. But if that's the case, it's troublesome. This kind of mysterious and unknown thing, who knows how much harm it will cause? He was thinking secretly. Marilyn Monroe looked at Coulson, her gentle smile gradually disappeared, replaced by a cold one. The badge that I haven't seen for a long time, although it has nothing to do with you, but your nature still arouses my disgust. Her words were sad, but also like memories. Just when Coulson was about to say something, a frivolous voice came from the air. Hey, look what I found! Dear lady, are you Marilyn's granddaughter, or great-granddaughter? I have to say, you really look alike, maybe you can try to be a star. The arrival of Iron Man brought a touch of disharmony to the atmosphere of the confrontation on the field. Marilyn Monroe watched the face of Tony Stark's battlesuit helmet open, and she murmured softly, Howard. Howard, who is as romantic as Tony's father, is not inferior to his son when it comes to romanticism. Although he has restrained a lot after getting married, he has also had an intersection with Marilyn. Chapter V Law Enforcement. Tony's face, which was very similar to his father, reminded her of the man who controlled the situation of the times, which aroused Marilyn's sadness. It also reminded her that her youth and beauty were all buried in dirty politics. Her eyes seemed to be full of sadness. Although there were no tears, people couldn't help feeling sorry for this haggard rose. What's your relationship with Howard? Marilyn looked at Tony, but the style was even stronger in sadness. He is my father. The next moment, Tony fell into a daze and blurted out involuntarily. After he woke up, he immediately called out Jarvis, put away his visor, and lifted the armor into the air. After reaching a certain height, he said incredulously, What did you do to me? Mr. Tony, your brain waves fluctuated abnormally just now. Jarvis' voice sounded at the right time. Some women's tricks, boy. Listening to the mechanical voice coming through the suit, Marilyn stroked her hair and sighed, It's really an unexpected answer. You shouldn't use your power on him, he doesn't belong to the mysterious world. Artoria, played by Noah, said. He moved slightly uncomfortably, the woman's body was really hard to get used to. I will use it more in the future, for the running in order to really play the role well, he paid attention to details and didn't change anything, so this body is completely female. Hey, this is not mixed with subjective consciousness. In order to stop Rasputin, you have exposed the mystery in public. I don't think my behavior is a big deal. What's more, the agreement between the mysterious world and the guardian of the world no longer exists, right? Marilyn looked at Alto Laya. There is an intoxicating depth in her beautiful eyes, or is there any difference between you as a king and me today? Artoria did not get angry at Marilyn's stinging words, and said with seriousness in her green and clear eyes, You are using your power against innocent people who have nothing to do with this matter. You too, the will of the Hall of Valor is for us to bring Rasputin back to the Hall of Valor. Itaki Uchiha said suddenly from the side, as if he didn't want the two women to get into a quarrel. Uchiha Itaki, are you not ready yet? Your 10-fist sword is too slow. Feel sorry. Director, I think we're in trouble. After lightly pressing the earphone next to his ear, Coulson glanced at the bearded Russian man. According to the auction materials and videos, plus other supernatural beings called him, and his self-introduction. The identity of the person in front of him seems to point to the evil monk of the Russian Tsar, Gregory Yefimovich Rasputin. If his ability is the same as the recorded historical materials, then it is really a dangerous man. In this way, the appearance of Marilyn Monroe was not accidental. Wait, it's time for the drama to end, little girl, do you really think you are King Arthur? Tony looked through the videos taken by the reporters who arrived long before he arrived. He held back his anger and said, This is not fun, you are like patients in a mental hospital having a happy patty. Arteria's hair stood up, and her face showed displeasure. Iron Man, although you are wrapped in armor, you don't look like a knight at all. In fact, I'm a rich man, and I can spend tens of thousands of plays of your standard. Girl, if you have the intention to become an actor, I may help you, provided you get out of prison first. Tony thought for a while, and added, if you are an adult. You are insulting my honor, Iron Man. Since you recognize your bravery, try to bear this move. Challenge the dignity of the king. Arteria raised her invisible sword wrapped in the wind, her emerald green eyes flashing with anger. Excali. Coulson. The energy level of that little girl is rising dramatically. No. This is already comparable to a nuclear bomb. Jarvis, what is this energy level? Coulson yelled in his heart, weren't you trying to dissuade him just now? In the panic, the sky suddenly darkened. There is no sunlight, but there is still the concept of light, and everyone can see things clearly. Artoria, who originally held up the invisible holy sword in her hand as if holding light, was deprived of the light she was holding the moment the night appeared. Coulson, the energy levels are gone. The monitor's dull voice came from Coulson's earphones. Mr. Stark, according to data analysis, the energy level on the target has disappeared. Shut up, Jarvis, I can see it. Tony watched the energy level on the control panel instantly calm down, and his brain almost fell into a sluggish state. There is someone on the street lamp. Someone shouted. The reporters and soldiers present, as well as some waking citizens, searched for the streetlights, and soon they discovered that, at some point, a man in a black robe with an invisible face was standing very close to the four heroic spirits and Coulson. On a street lamp. In the darkness, his old black robe trembled slightly with the wind, coupled with a pale and bloodless chin exposed, like a of death from hell. This inexplicable person made everyone vigilant. Finally, don't hide anymore, report your name, if you think you are worthy of the respect worthy of your strength. Artoria yelled, holding the sword in front of her. Artoria's sword was not aimed at the innocent. Uchiha Itaki explained for Artoria. Arteria just snorted lightly. The man in black suddenly disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already among Coulson, Tony Stark, and the four heroic spirits. Coulson felt that the man in black seemed to have glanced at him, and he felt a little uneasy. The sudden darkness around him, the strange visibility, and this new person, all the intrusions, all of them the information he brought was too messy, so he chose to remain silent for a while, quietly watching the development of the matter. Moreover, he had no intention of taking force measures. Whether it was Rasputin or Marilyn Monroe, the large-scale psychic powers they displayed made their shield. Is this your purpose? The legendary King Arthur. You are indeed a legendary king. Even if you have the commandments of a knight, it does not prevent you from using the king's tricks. Hee. It's my honor to be asked for your name. You can call me Yexen. The black-cropped man let out two chuckles, then covered his mouth with his hands and let out a sigh. Seeing the dazed look of its owner who has not opened his eyes from sleep, I'm planning to do something, it seems to be my thing. The man in black lazily raised his hand and pointed at Rasputin. He is no, glanced at Tony, and he couldn't help complaining in his heart, he acted according to Artoria's thinking mode, although he didn't really use the sword of contract victory, well, he couldn't use it if he wanted to come out, after all, Arteria at this time is not the real Artoria. But this one will really appear in the future. Reading www.yuyugonshu.com. What will happen to Artoria after getting this memory? Hee. We don't know why Iron Man is so poisonous, and we don't dare to know. You are, the successor? The new guardian of the material world and the mysterious world. Rasputin did not get angry, but looked at the black-cropped man full of fear. His tall body seemed like a leopard charging same, full of vigilance, always ready for the next moment of action. Your Excellency Yasen. Uchiha Itaka said, the Hall of Valor informed us in the will given before our arrival that the treaty between the mysterious world and the guardians of the previous generation is null and void. Really? It's so sad. Yet Xian's last two words no longer sound like sleepy words, but a kind of indifference. He slowly stretched out his hand and hugged the corner of the white hat, revealing a lock of white hair and one eye, which was filled with grey and white chaos. He still whispered in a voice that seemed to have not woken up, "Spell return." A string of black runes flashed across the eye. When No's voice fell, Itaki Uchiha, Artoria, and Marilyn all floated out spirit particles, and their bodies dissipated at an extremely fast speed. Jarvis. Analyze the scene just now. Tony said hastily. Mr. Stark, after analysis, the particles floating out of those people who disappeared just now all had high energy reactions, but this high energy soon disappeared. According to observation, the particles suddenly appeared in a certain condensed state. Disappeared, there is no diffusion phenomenon. After judging from various possibilities, there is a great probability that it is space transfer. Jarvis responded efficiently. The space transfer is really incredible. Tony's eyes showed surprise and excitement. Chapter 6 Prologue and Epilogue. Mr. Jessen, what have you done? Coulson's voice rose, and his pupil shrank. These people have clearly confirmed that they can have the power to affect matter, so why did they become particle-like? The headquarters of SHIELD, who has been monitoring Nick Fury, murmured, maybe, we should find some information related to magic. Yasin, who let the heroic spirit dissipate, turned his head to look at Rasputin, but found that there was no one there. As expected of a person who once made such a big splash in a country, he is good at grasping the timing, which is why he likes smart people. Yasin's eyes, which were covered by the hat again, were narrowed, and his relaxed expression represented his joy. Coulson and the others only saw this mysterious man, who seemed to sigh in distress, and then said, why was he escaped by such a troublesome guy? Has he really become a product of the Hall of Valor? Trouble. Jessen turned around to face Coulson and Iron Man and bowed his lower body slightly. Gentlemen, I hope we will have a more pleasant meeting again. He raised his hand to cover his mouth, seemed to let out another breath, and disappeared the next moment. Just like when I came here, it seems that this world never existed at all. What is this, a stage play that ended in a hurry? Coulson muttered to himself. Tony's face was heavy. The way he disappeared suddenly, and the street video that Jarvis sent him, made him realize the destructiveness of these people. I have to think of a countermeasure, that's right, a new armor. I need to add some devices that are immune to this unknown attack against the spirit. Maybe I have to study the body curve, built-in modification, increase the volume, and I should consider improving the strength and agility, and the monitoring and counterattack system. It should have a name. Let me think about it. Anti-heroic spirit armor, that's a good name. Don't they claim to be from the Hall of Valor? Many ideas flashed through his mind. Mr. Stark, I think we should need some help from you. Coulson's voice interrupted Tony's train of thought. Tony looked at him, not caring about the interruption of the road, and said frivolously, maybe, is not needed. Then, the battle clothes flew away with him. This chaos finally ushered in the end. The official personnel evacuated the crowd and dealt with the injured. Oh, very good. Dear Tony, you came just in time, and your influence will be even greater with you. Nyohi seemed to leave his right eye unintentionally, and looked at the blackboard seriously like a good student. It seems that the chalk in the hands of a bald teacher has the same magic power as attracting people. But he was thinking about what happened just now. No one knew what the little boy who was sitting in the classroom honestly at the moment, who looked ordinary except for being handsome, had just done something. When the get-out-of-class bell rang, the children in the room moved like monkeys. Job, hurry up, the basketball court. Oh, Sahud, hurry up you shorty. There are always many teenagers who love sports. Alyssa, look at my makeup, it took me 2 hours to get it done today. Hey, Uriel, maybe you should think about whether you are going to die from overwork. Follower Kong Tan. Stay away from me. Looking at his little friend Kong Tan, who had a quarrel with the girl, Nyohi looked at the childish quarrel in his eyes for a while, and couldn't help thinking, what an ugly makeup. Well, maybe there is no difference between him and Kong Tan, but he will not admit that he is naive. Nyohi tidied up the books and put away the notes. The moment before he closed the notes, the messy English sentences on the notes instantly became orderly and beautiful. When he saw a few people walking towards him, he faced them, put a finger on his lips, and shushed with a smile. One of the tall boys helplessly spread his hands to the people around him. Okay, Noah is busy with his own business again, buddies, let's find something else to do. After finishing speaking, a chubby boy scratched his head and said puzzledly, Nyohi has been mysterious recently, and he is always busy with things. Rove, do you think that No is as full of Coke potato chips as you are? He is a book writer. Kong Tan, who had just gotten rid of Uriel and was a little embarrassed, passed by and heard his muttering, and couldn't help but joked. He published the book again. It's amazing! Little Fatty Rove just exclaimed. Of course, you don't want to see whose friend he is. Kong Tan looked like he was no. Come on. Kong Tan, you're just a follower. The tall boy slapped Kong Tan on the back, pointed to the classroom door, and said, would you like to play rugby? That's your home field. Of course. Kong Tan nodded, he is the main force of the school team. The nickname follower is just because when Nyohi helps people, because he is always with Nyohi, he will be the first to get benefits. In fact, who in the class is not Nyohi's follower? Oh, praise to Almighty Noah! Kong Tan thought in his heart that since he met No, he has never had a headache because of his studies, and his Chinese mother is very strict with his studies. Sighing lightly, the protagonist who is known as Almighty No suddenly felt bored at this moment. Compared with the excitement of acting just now, the calm daily life he has become accustomed to now really cannot be enjoyable. I need some excitement. How about holding a nuclear bomb to piece the Pentagon? Self-destruction or something, so interesting. To snuff out his dangerous and meaningless thoughts, No closed his eyes, but what greeted him was not only darkness, but also a panel that appeared with it. This is the effect of a small instrument he implanted in himself, which can construct a panel that can be projected in the eyes. The reason why he closes his eyes is that No does not want people to notice the focus in his eyes. In the eyes of the outside world, at this time, it is more like closing your eyes and meditating. For this reason, he also came up with a reason and took some actions. To put it bluntly, No Yugal, is already a well-known author. Although I didn't pay too much attention to this, the works of this world I read in my previous life contained too many novel inspirations for this world. Coupled with his own good writing style and impeccable logic, using his own name as a pseudonym, he still developed a reputation as a ghost in the American literary world. He mainly focuses on detectives and children's interests, and occasionally writes some popular science articles, the knowledge and accuracy of which have even been recognized by some famous scientists, paving the way for his future career as a scientific researcher. Focus on the panel. Name, No Eagle. Age, 11. Lifespan, 5 years, September 21. Remainder, Charm, 19. Normal people fluctuate between 12 and 15, temperament can be added, intelligence not measurable, Constitution, 15, 12 for a normal adult man, source power, 1 star, the lowest level, starting from 1, source integrity, 17% combat power, destroy the city, with pure combat power that can be exerted by various factors, abilities, entity projection, putting consciousness into a temporarily shaped body, changing reality, creating from nothing, space coordinates, leaving breath, moving in space, multidimensional vortex, by virtue of its own ability, it can affect the characteristics of multidimensional, and the derived multidimensional vortex ability, guided by No's cognition, pulls the concept body of familiar people or things, and reshapes the soul and body. The larger the energy body, the more source force you pay. Subsidiary life, Rasputin, Marilyn false identity, Uchiha Itaki, Saber personality prosthesis, Yesin, law enforcer of the material realm and mysterious realm. Plan 1. Recovery of the mysterious realm, 16% completion rate, important node 1. Hall of Valor, the existence of heroic spirits is confirmed, and the original world soul itself is transformed to make the original historical figures become heroic spirits, and some of the characters summoned from the multiverse are used as heroic spirits, and some replace the original historical figures too. The hidden master mystic reappears. It is a simple panel, but it shows what Noah is currently doing and what he has, allowing him to think intuitively. Today's No, UU reading www.yukanshu.com is equivalent to a nuclear weapon without nuclear fuel, or a ninja who has run out of chakra. Even if the ninja is Uchiha Madara, without chakra, he is only equivalent to an ordinary person with greater strength and better vision. Nyohi calls his power the source power. The beginning of everything is also the beginning of change. Now he doesn't have a lot of source power. If you compare it with Guyi, regardless of the quality or the total amount, I'm afraid it doesn't even have 1%. But Noah thought of a solution, which is to base everything on the mystery of his power. Although it is difficult to directly make something that does not exist appear in reality, there is no limit on the spiritual level, which is related to his power. His soul seems to be the carrier of his power, and when his spiritual power touches other spiritual bodies, the nature of the power contained in his soul will make other spiritual bodies have no resistance and let them do whatever they want for. This saves too much power. Originally, Nyohi planned to use this power to construct a virtual world on the spiritual level to collect human emotions that allow Yuan Li to grow, but this plan had no choice but to give up in the end, because in his experiment, entering the virtual world he constructed several people in the virtual world, under the unconscious oppression of his power nature, consciously fell into a deep sleep, unable to reap any emotions at all. And by changing the memory, the fine ones are too complicated and cumbersome, and can only be used in a small amount, while the memory details are too rough for the majority, and there may be too many problems. And after all, the creatures he can create, or himself, have certain limitations in spiritual power, so it's better to deceive reality bit by bit, cause influence, harvest emotions, and change the plot quickly. But as the root of the heroic spirit, in the spiritual field that he is good at, even the Ancient One can only achieve material destruction. Chapter 7 Daily Life. After analyzing the current situation, the mysterious incidents he created similar to Sander will happen in the near future, and even many of them have already happened, but they haven't been exposed yet, or the scenes are too small. He didn't need to pay too much attention to these things. Only when Sander summoned Rasputin was such a big scene, because it was an important point of his plan, he took the lead in the whole process. The appearance of the heroic spirit will inevitably attract the attention of Shield. After that, Nyohi opened his eyes, the corners of his lips slightly raised, thinking, they will find the world so strange. That's good, you are unfamiliar with your own world, but I have transformed this stage of heroes and villains into what I expected. A hand was placed on his shoulder, and when she turned her head, a beautiful little girl appeared in front of her eyes. This was the baby in No's class and one of the boy's girlfriend goals, Alina Yuffie. Of course, in Nyohi's eyes, she was just a pretty little girl. Looking at her face, which she would find cute no matter what, Nyohi thought countless times, would she cry if she took her lollipop away? Nyohi, your eyes are so strange. Alina said that No's eyes were so weird that she even shivered just now, and she always felt that this well-behaved boy in front of her was thinking of something strange, and it was the kind that was unfriendly to herself. Because of this, I have been very concerned about it just now. No stretched out his hand abruptly, touched Alina's hair lightly, and when he retracted, he showed Alina a piece of grass pinched between his fingers. What's the point of this? Alina pouted with a slightly red face, but felt a little embarrassed, and quickly touched her head, but found nothing. Maybe it's just the wind blowing by chance. Nyohi shrugged, the grass just now was just shaped by him casually, and it was just a possible entanglement that the little girl would have about her bad thoughts about herself in the future. Alas, why do these little girls always like to find out the truth? Mr. No will also be very distressed. The well-behaved Mr. Noah opened his innocent eyes and blinked. What did she come to find herself for? Nyohi didn't continue to entangle this topic. Who knows if the actions just now would cause her to feel ambiguous and gentle. Then I'm sorry, Mr. Nyohi doesn't want to fall in love yet, at least after puberty is over. Nyohi's eyes are a little erratic again. You've always been so secretive recently, why? Has Holmes encountered trouble? Alina, there is no Sherlock Holmes, but poor No has. No's nickname is Sherlock Holmes, and his classmates always think that he can write detective novels, and he can change his career to become a detective in the future. He sighed softly, looked at Alina, smiled and said, Alina, what kind of person do you want to be in the future? Noah, who suddenly had some doubts about his life, asked involuntarily. Me. Alina froze for a moment at No's sudden question, and then said with guarded and suspicious eyes, Dear Holmes, is there a little girl who is lost in life in your novel? She didn't want to be Noah's character, the last one who was still called a stupid woodcutter. Unfortunately, no, Miss Alina. Nyohi shook the notebook he had placed on the table casually, and said lazily, My new work is about to be finished, can I ask you to contribute $15 by then? This is not the proper attitude towards ladies, Mr. Holmes, when will you be a little gentleman? Alina put her hips on her hips, looking like a little pepper. Looking at her blonde hair, Nyohi always wanted to change this sunny color into a fiery color. In that case, I will find her even more cute, after all, she is just a fiery kitten. Snapped. The left hand hit the right hand that was about to move, and warned that he was a human, not a cat, and he was still a heretical golden retriever, so he couldn't touch it. Maybe I'll study, you know, I'm a fast learner. Nyohi seemed not to care about his behavior just now, and asked casually but with a slightly serious expression, Okay, Alina, what do you want? What can I do? Really, dear Mr. Noah Holmesigle, have you forgotten that you promised me a short poem? Alina looked defeated, I'm really looking forward to it. Noah remembered what he had promised 4 days ago, and resisted the idea of copying a song. Although the promise was very good, he wasted a lot of time in adjusting various details in order to finish summoning Rasputin for Sander. Energy. So of course I forgot. You know, Alina, inspiration comes when you say it, but when it doesn't exist, I can only wait pitifully. Well, don't look at me like that, I think Mr. Inspiration has arrived. Nyohi showed helpless eyes. He looked at Alina's lovely and beautiful face, sighed, and turned his pen, maybe you should wait for me. How about this afternoon? Forgive the poor child who has worked hard for a long time. The short poem you asked me to write required a lot of love. You know, although my parents often leave me at home, I don't feel that I lack love. I always need to think carefully about the poems your friends need. You don't want to be perfunctory, do you? When Nyohi was talking, he tried to open his eyes wide, making his eyes look a little pitiful, and the clear pupils seemed to be filled with water. Alina turned her head and covered her face with her right hand. She couldn't imagine what kind of expression her friend would have if she saw her idol like this. Forget it, don't let her know. Knowing that No is like a spiritual pillar in the heart of her friend in the orphanage, Alina had to resist the urge to tell her. Oh, well, dear Mr. Holmes the crybaby. Alina only had the strength to sigh. Admit it, your immature body is full of motherly love, whether you are a girl or a woman. Humming a ditty in his heart, Nyohi restrained his pitiful expression and said seriously, Alina, I've never really cried. Then Alina gives him a pinch and turns away, leaving Noah grinning behind her. Nyohi, you are so naive. Nyohi said in his heart. But looking at the laughing classroom, he thought silently, but this is very interesting. The morning time passed quickly, and Nyohi didn't do anything else this morning. He wrote the manuscript of the next book, and Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com thought about what kind of short poem to write. Sometimes, while taking a break, I went to play rugby with Kong Tan and the others. When it was announced that it was a holiday in the afternoon, the voice of Long Live Wellaville Private Middle School resounded throughout the campus. Who yelled first? Noah says he won't betray his friend, so he pushes Mr. Kangton out in front of his teacher. Fortunately, Mrs. Maja, who has long hair and is very beautiful, forgave this incident very tolerantly, which made no less worried about his friend being exposed. The children who got the indulgence time went to play in groups of 3 or 4, some played ball, some enjoyed electronic products, and some enjoyed delicious food. In the 5 Gyuzi burger restaurant, Nyohi, Kanton, and Alina were eating burgers together. While chewing on the unique mustard beef burger, Kanton complained, "No, you are too disrespectful. Teacher Meijiya is very gentle, this kind of thing is not worth worrying about." Noah took a bite of the beef burger with jalapenos on his left hand and pickled peppers from Huaxia. His right hand kept writing English on the tablet on the table. He was in contact with his editor to discuss revisions and publishing. The serious boy in front of him drove Kong Tan crazy. He took a bite of the burger and said, "I don't think that's the point." Nyohi stopped his hands and pondered, looked up at Kong Tan, tilted his head and asked in doubt, "Is my posture wrong at that time? Do you want me to kick your hard next time, Mr. Kong Tan?" Snapped. Kong Tan covered his face fiercely, lying on the table almost powerlessly. "Oh, you devil! Why are you obsessed with such a taste in speech?" "I don't know, and I don't dare to think about it." Nyohi shrugged, and said lazily, "But man, you have to get used to it." Chapter 8, Nick Fury. The 3 boys and girls settled for a table of food. Of course, it was mainly Kong Tan who ate it. Most of these were ordered by him. Although he is quite thin, his seemingly thin body will definitely not lack muscle. Nock only ate a hamburger and some chicken nuggets, and didn't even drink Coke, which was less than Alina's. "I really want to drink beer and eat fried chicken. I don't even have Coke. I have no soul." Crying face, Nyohi seemed to be a poet who had lost his poetry in the distance, and sighed all the way, as if fried chicken was the flower of his inspiration, and beer was the path of inspiration. Both Kong Tan and Alina walked beside him in the same shape, covering their ears with their hands, like 2 silent big toys that walk on their own. God, do you think the 2 of them haven't protested? But No would look at them with that kind of pitiful eyes every time, and Alina would directly lose her combat power every time. As for Kong Tan, oh, please don't mention him. He is deterred by violence. Every time he fights with No, he knocks him to the ground. I took a taxi and came to a park. The 3 found a piece of grass and sat on it. Noah took out his tablet again. This time he did not chat with his editor, but called up a blank document. When the leaves of the tree stop, I gently ask my friend, where is the wind that takes him away from home, if he can no longer drift? Chanting verses and speaking English with a sad accent, the 2 people around him couldn't help but immerse themselves in the stories he told. Ye was taken away by the wind and left home, but the wind disappeared before the journey was too long, and he could not go back or travel far, so he could only stay here. Kong Tan found that he seemed to have never really understood this good friend. What was buried in his heart? Afterwards, the 3 children separated after only playing cards for a while. But Alina said seriously before leaving that her friends would definitely like this short poem. At that time, Nyohi suddenly thought of Alina's original request, to have the feeling of happiness and being cared for. He thought to himself mockingly, is it considered caring to talk about the same disease? Drive through the bustling city and streets. Back home, looking at the empty living room, Nyohi calmly looked at the photo placed in the middle of the room. His parents in this life were not at home all year round, busy with career, or money. Noah never complained, not because he forgave his parents or something childish, but all of this followed his will. Through his means, with a small operation, the two of them were busy with business trips, so Noah's living alone became the norm. After all, living together all the time, he would always see something was wrong. He didn't want to use methods like brainwashing, so he came up with this idea. He sat on the sofa, pushing his thoughts carefully. The heroic spirit has officially descended, coupled with this big scene that cannot be concealed, he will fill the headlines in the United States, and at that time he will also get a huge source of power. In fact, he has already sensed his source of power now. Power is growing rapidly. In fact, the increase in practicality is not right, it should be said that the upper limit is increased, the emotions of the creature and the things related to the origin of the world can constantly repair the brokenness of his essence, so that the source power he can use increases, and the source force can rely on him self-recovery. Heroic spirits are just the prologue of the mysterious world, and there are more unknowns waiting to be revealed. There are many people like Sander, some will usher in luck, and some will usher in misfortune. Noah sensed the traces of his power scattered all over the world. When he concentrated his perception on a certain place in New York, his face hesitated again. He was considering taking it back, but the thought just passed by. He whispered to himself, whether it was before or now, especially if you are in New York, if you have some power, you can always protect yourself, Kong Tan. 4 days later. The existence of the heroic spirit has completely fermented. Articles about heroic spirits appeared in various media times. Them who exist in history, good or evil, the boring pranks of power users. Marilyn Monroe died at Kennedy, the man with the biggest asterisk, the Russian monk. Formerly known as the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau, now SHIELD, the headquarters. Nick Fury was sitting on a chair, listening to the agent's report with his arms crossed. The black complexion made it impossible to know his face at this time. After listening to the agent, he went down and opened his mouth to Cole, who had been there all the time. Sendeo, that is to say, there are people pushing behind these reports, and we can't completely suppress them with our official and private strength? Agent Carlson, it seems that there are more things besides what we are waiting for. Insider. It seems so, sir. In addition, we have found some traces of that Gregory Yefimovich Rasputin. According to the current clues, he is hunting virgins. Carlson said. Heroic spirit, it's really a big trouble. Find this heroic spirit, who may be the only one that exists in the real world, as soon as possible, and see if you can communicate, but you have to prepare for the worst. Nick Fury opened his own-eyed eyes, his face was calm, and when he remembered something, he said again, there is also that Yexin, have you found the target? The other party left too little information, not at all. Besides, sir, I have a bad feeling about that Rasputin. When he confronted other spirits, he said that other people are afraid of him, and it is probably his. There is something behind them, that is, the existence of the so-called Hall of Valor, something that reading www.yuyugonshu.com dreads. If heroic spirits really exist. Nick Fury interrupted him and said solemnly, it's not a farce. Yes, if they really exist, perhaps the order of the world will be in turmoil. However, based on the existing information, we have no evidence to deny it, sir. Sander's daughter Erin, who summoned Rasputin, was the gang of human traffickers who sold her, was wiped out a week ago, and now she is in an orphanage. Through our inquiries and investigation of Sander himself, we found that he did come into contact with something that might be related to magic, and he also go after some celebrity-related antiques at any cost. Carlson's tone was heavy. Assuming that the Hall of Valor really exists, is the identity of Yexin also real? Does the mysterious world they talk about really exist? Why did they hide, so secret that even they didn't know anything before? A group of unknown numbers of people possessed powerful power, like mobile nuclear bombs that could explode at any time. The power of the heroic spirits was already enough to make people tremble. The power to easily manipulate people's spirits made ordinary people feel like they were at will in front of them. Manipulated puppet. Coulson is not a stupid person, and even the simple things he thinks can be judged by anyone with basic logic. Both the White House and the World Security Council have put a lot of pressure on them, and even the generals in the military who are obsessed with superhumans can't wait to call all the satellites to find out those beings called heroic spirits. They are like hyenas smelling meat, frantically exhausting all means to search. In the past few days, because of the dissemination of the media and those who experienced the disaster of heroic spirits in the area of Hawk Street, the American people who learned of the existence of heroic spirits carried out several large-scale demonstrations excitedly and uneasy. Chapter 9 Valhalla. The president in the White House also sent several tweets expressing his anger. Who cares about his anger? That traitor who only reneges on the treaty is useless at all, okay? Many Americans who hate him said so in interviews. However, there are quite a lot of voices supporting him. After all, he still has a very unreasonable popularity in the United States. Coulson, now let's focus on the behind-the-scenes forces that promote the media. This is the only bright line. Others, the intensity can be weakened accordingly, but we must closely follow Rasputin's whereabouts. Nick Fury thought about every detail of the information currently in his possession, and wanted to lift the veil on this series of events and see the truth inside them. He tapped his finger on the table, and then said, "No, there should be another aspect. Coulson, the process of getting Sanders' daughter Erin transferred to the orphanage, and how the underground group she was sold into was destroyed. The reasons have all been investigated." "Yes, sir." Coulson nodded solemnly, then immediately turned around and went out, following Nick Fury's instructions. After Coulson left, Nick Fury stroked his blindfold, his exposed eyes looked cold and calm, and he calmly thought about the possible loopholes again. He was not limited to these things, but also took out the previous mysterious events for analysis. For this reason, he turned on the computer, conducted a series of permission tests such as iris, fingerprint, password, voice, etc., and opened a bunch of different permissions. A file. A pile of weird and mysterious things unfolded. Fanatical admirers of Joan of Arc in France, Black Goat Ceremony in Germany, Scarlet Masks in Guinness stores, dry wells with howling ghosts in Japanese mountain villages, alienated corpses of experimental viruses in secret research institutes, alienated human beings who blood and become powerful. Most of these things have been proven to be mysterious, and they all happened in the past 5 years. The corpses crawling out of human history are adding chaos to this world. As the director of SHIELD, Nick Fury, who has great power in this world, is not easy. The original aliens, and terrorists are already a heavy burden, but now all kinds of mysteries emerge endlessly. The incident made him carry even more weight. It's getting more and more chaotic. What's the reason? That Jessen. Nick Fury's eyes were heavy. Where he couldn't notice, the shadow at the corner of the table quietly shrunk a little. In a villa in Barmunk District, New York, the boy with chestnut hair who was sitting on a soft sofa opened his eyes. There was a layer of black mist covering his eyes, which slowly faded away as he opened them. Shadow vision, lifted. Using the multidimensional vortex, No, who has unlocked the knowledge of multiple worlds, already possesses the ability of magic. He who just used this ability to spy on the secret conversation of SHIELD has not changed much, just like the original calm. But gradually, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, which contained joy overflowing from the depths of his heart. Nyo, he sighed softly, you are the one who stitches the web of the world, and I am the spider behind the scenes who reweaves the web. In the calm river, as a new ferryman, I hold up the first pole and face the road ahead storm. In fact, this world is already chaotic enough, and when the foreshadowing he has planted over the years blossoms, it will definitely bring about an even bigger storm. Noah, or Hiyun, he has never been obsessed with the simple concept of living, but if the future is interesting enough, it does not prevent him from having a strong interest in seeing it. If his nature insists on being classified into one category, he probably belongs to neutral good. A ferocious lion will eat a tiger, and a tired old wolf will take human life. There is no room for relaxation in this world. Even a figure of the Heavenly Father will perish. My strength is not strong enough, and I have no time to relax. According to my calculations, making up for the damage to my origin can make my lifespan exceed 17, and gradually return to normal. I need the upper limit of my origin power to reach 4 stars. According to my plan, it is probably the one recognized by the public in the mysterious world. One moment, not too far away. But in the future, the death-snapping finger that represents the collection of rules and forces in this world will choose me, and I am afraid I will not be spared. Although the essence of the fetish that is integrated with me is very strong, it is too damaged after all. Seriously, compared to the peak, it is like a giant tree and a withered seedling, and it is impossible for me to face the power that is like the decision of the world. Nyaha's brain is performing various calculations. The tree seed grows up and grows into a tree, which is difficult for a person to shake, but it can be easily broken when it is still a sapling. Noah called up his panel. Name, No Eagle Age, 11 Lifespan, 5 years, September 21st, Remainder, Charm, 19, Normal people fluctuate between 12 and 15, Temperament can be added, Intelligence not measurable, Constitution, 15, 12 for a normal adult man, Source Power, 1 star, the lowest level, starting from 1, Source Integrity, 34% Combat Power, Destroy the city, with pure combat power that can be exerted by various factors, abilities, entity projection, putting consciousness into a temporarily shaped body, changing reality, creating from nothing, space coordinates, leaving breath, moving in space, multidimensional vortex. By virtue of its own ability, it can affect the characteristics of multidimensional, and the derived multidimensional vortex ability, guided by No's cognition, pulls the concept body of familiar people or things, and reshapes the soul and body. The larger the energy body, the more source force you pay. Subsidiary life, Rasputin, Marilyn false identity, Uchiha Itaki, Saber personality prosthesis, Yesin, law enforcer of the material realm and mysterious realm. Plan 1. Recovery of the mysterious realm, 16% completion rate, important node 1. Hall of Valor, the existence of heroic spirits is confirmed, and the original world soul itself is transformed to make the original historical figures become heroic spirits, and some of the characters summoned from the multiverse are used as heroic spirits, and some replace the original historical figures too. The hidden master mystic reappears. Nyohi planned Yuan Li as a star. 1 star is equivalent to an ordinary internet celebrity, 2 stars are celebrities with a certain popularity, 3 stars are celebrities with a certain degree, and 4 stars are extremely famous. Of course, this statement is only equivalent to a metaphor, but the difference between the levels of each stage is clear. Now, No, who has 1 star of origin power, can directly summon the fighting power of the Naruto World Chunin level. But in fact, it can't be calculated like this. The source power is not irrecoverable, but can be drawn from the unknown nothingness. The so-called hindrance is only the upper limit of the source force caused by the damage of the source. Using the ability of the vortex of multiple elements, he can first pull in the concept bodies he needs, use the source force to create a basic prototype for them, and then seal them in the form of a seal, and then use the source force to continuously infuse them, and when they are used up, restore them. UU reading www.yuyugonshu.com is shaping. Although this is very slow, relying on the strength of spiritual power, and the current exposure is all creations such as ghosts, so although the mages of Kamatage have shot in the dark, they have nothing to gain, at most they can only destroy. And some powerful monsters specially created by No even caused them a lot of trouble. And that supreme mage, Guyi, No knew that she had made a move. The monster Kayako he created was wiped out within a few days of its birth in Japan. Through the intercommunication at the root, No can feel the powerful power to kill Kayako, as well as the inexplicable sense of time. He probably guessed that Guyi should have used the time gem to detect Kayako, a powerful existence among monsters. No didn't know what method she used, but it is certain that Guyi found nothing in the end. It can only destroy Kayako. Since that time, Guyi has obviously become a laissez-faire attitude towards these ghosts and monsters that are mostly in a sealed state or limited to haunting one place, but he has not given up on observing. This is exactly what No needs. In fact, it is precisely because of the existence of Guyi that No chose to use the heroic spirit system as the prologue of his script. There is a long way to go. Nyohi sighed, as the guardian of the earth, Guyi is like a mountain, which prevents many of his plans from being carried out directly and needs to be deterred. However, he didn't feel much pressure in his heart, because he knew that soon he would have the power to have a direct dialogue with Guyi. As a good rabbit of the Huaxia family, Nyohi deeply knows that infrastructure is important, and nuclear weapons are also important. Without nuclear weapons, infrastructure construction cannot be fully implemented, and efforts are not at the same level. Chapter 10 in progress. Noah, who understands the importance of having the power of the Heavenly Father, would rather delay the plan and watch his time being wasted every minute, but also devote a lot of energy to the creation of the Hall of Valor. That's right, it was the Hall of Valor. When the Hall of Valor was truly formed, the power connected to the root of the earth was enough to allow him to enter the Heavenly Father class, even if it was like a castle in the sky. It was extremely weak in the Heavenly Father class. But after all, this is the same level of power as the Ancient One. For the formation of the Hall of Valor, Noah even delayed the progress of restoring the original source, and put the completion of the Hall of Valor in the first place. Now Noah's wish power comes from his works and some high-end vests. These vests do not refer to the type of law enforcer Yasin, but refer to businessmen, philanthropists, celebrities, etc., whose great exposure can bring him a lot of aspirational identities. Of course, these identities are not all purely for the purpose of providing willpower, and there are also special arrangements among them. In order to shape these vests, Nyohi used the power of brainwashing a lot. Shaking his head, Nyohi stood up, and the moment he stepped up, his whole body turned into a shadow and sank into the ground. It's coming soon, everything is coming soon, just need a little catalyst. Outside of a golden flame, everything is nothingness, and the surroundings are white. The golden flame was warm and cold, it seemed to be hopeful and dark, and there seemed to be countless figures in the rising fire, but looking at it, it seemed that there was nothing. This is the spirit, the human spirit. A shadow, like an ink drop suddenly appearing on the white paper, spread its own ink halo. When it reached a distance of about half a meter, the shadow extended upwards and turned into a boy with chestnut hair. Slowly approaching the golden flame, stretched out his hand, as if to caress gently. The golden flame burned his hand, but it was like a harmless pet. This is the core of the Hall of Valor. Here, it is human reason, the place of heaven, and the root. It is the home of all epics and myths. Although it is still in its infancy, no one can deny its greatness. Nyohi looked at the golden flames, like the flesh and blood on his own body. Although it was not sticky, it was completely controllable. This feeling as if his body was divided into two parts made him feel strange every time. Standing in front of it and closing his eyes, No seemed to become this flame, and everything about himself was transformed into this miraculous existence. You are my possibility at this time, my foothold at this time, grow up quickly. The golden flame became stronger in an instant, as if responding. The surrounding nothingness also seems to be surging, as if everything will be born in the next moment. Hehe, you are also in a hurry. No's pale grey eyes shone with crystal light. Manuscripts are impossible, Rowan, maybe you should consider solving your single problem. He crossed his arms on his chest and shook his head. He is very unhappy now, looking at the person in front of him, just it's like Robin Hood saw a corrupt consul, and a cat saw a rancid mouse. He was rejecting this person physically and mentally. God, mind your lamb, keep him away from me or I'll kick his heart sooner or later. He looked at his editor with disgust. The young Mr. Rowan Basnell looked at the boy in front of him with a wry smile. No, I think you have always been a precocious person. You are different from those children who only think about games and sports. Think about it. If you take this opportunity to publish a book about heroic spirits, it will make a lot of money. Didn't you show me a magical outline? I remember it's about a descendant of a nobleman holding a legendary bow, summoning the ancestor to help him fight, right? Just change the setting of the ancestor to a heroic spirit, let the most popular heroes in history have played a few times. You will definitely be able to catch up with this wave of enthusiasm, and your weight will definitely go further. Luo Wen persuaded earnestly. As I said, I'm going to take a break after this book is finished. Noah put down his hand, picked up his cup and took a sip of coffee. Don't be so stubborn, Noah. Do you think I'm a pedantic human being corrupted by capital? You really don't understand elegance, Rowan. No said gracefully. I want to beat this kid, Rowan held back his dangerous thoughts. In reality, however, he couldn't do that at all. There is a huge contrast between the status of an editor and an author. If the author's grades are mediocre, the editor will naturally have a lot of authority. Reverse. No, think about it for yourself. By the way, there is a reception recently, and many celebrities in the society will go. Are you going to attend? I have received your invitation letter. Luo Wen is actually a very capable person. In addition to being No's exclusive editor, he is also his agent. TCH. Nyohi put down his glass. Let's hear it. I don't think you would specifically mention it at a celebrity gathering. Justin Hammer of Hammer Industries, Norman Osborn of Osborn Group, great philanthropist Wilson Fisk, and Tony Stark. Rowan said solemnly. Noah is no exception when ARMS bosses appear on the list. In fact, these people are extremely loyal to cultural and charity-related receptions and activities. It seems that they are normal celebrities, not arms dealers. And Tony Stark, he just likes to be lively and adored. As for that Wilson Fisk, he is Jin Bin. The great philanthropist Kim Bin. He pursed his lips and forced himself not to spray the coffee in Rowan's face. Actually, I really recommend you to attend this banquet. You know, Noah, you already have a company. Even if you don't like these, you should attend more of them. This will greatly help you accumulate contacts. Benefit. Rowan said seriously. So, I am also a corrupt capitalist. Noah sighed. Hearing what Luo Wen said, he also thought of the company he built because he put too much money in the bank. But since he finished the program, he has never cared about it, so that he almost forgot about it. Not yet yellow? Noah thought. If Luo Wen knew his idea, he would definitely vomit blood, scolding No for being so busy for his company, and his company's employees who were forgotten by the boss and still worked hard. Then why this time, there are so many big shots? Of course it's because of Mr. Majayasang's work. You reading www.yukansha.com's Parina's song won multiple awards including the Nobel Prize, completely respecting the status of a literary masterpiece. No, you really don't pay attention to these things, obviously you also praised Palina's singing song. Where is the heart? In Luo Wen's eyes, he became a salty fish. In fact, Noah, who was so busy with his own plan, had no time to pay attention to these trivial things. I've been busier than you imagined recently, but Mr. Mago-san's Parina's song is not surprising. Help me with a car, and I'll go to play. After finishing speaking, he drank the specially ordered extra bitter coffee with a blank expression. Well, refreshing. Okay, I will arrange these for you, but I will pick you up at 7 o'clock in the evening the day after tomorrow. Rowan nodded. Well, then I'll go first. Mr. Luowen, please don't come to me if you don't have anything important recently. I also want games and sports. By the way, I also want to study. Showing a bared smile and flicking his tongue, No stood up and left, raising his arms and waving, "Goodbye, this is rejecting my proposal for the book." Luo Wen sat in his seat with a helpless expression on his face. On the way, He bought a newspaper and read it. Titles such as "Another Innocent Woman Victim," "A Murderer Who Only Killed Virgins," "A Woman Sells It for the First Time to Save Her Life" came into his eyes. Rasputin, he should have almost prepared, relying on chaste women to absorb magic power. Fortunately, he was able to find so many virgins. But it is almost time to deal with him, and it will be here soon. Nyohi's grey eyes calmed down and filled with various calculations. Rasputin is just the prey of the plan.